Alright, so in this video we are going to be talking about an introduction to genetic engineering. So I'm calling this biotechnology and genomics. One thing that you all have to realize is that we have been altering the genes of organisms ever since people have been around. So that might sound a little strange. I think sometimes we think about this technology may have only come about in the past 100 years or so. But no, it's been going on ever since there have been people. And how have we been doing it? There's actually two ways. And you guys can jump right down here to these definitions here. So we've been indirectly modifying the genes of pets, livestock, any kind of crops, any kind of ornamental plants, really anything that you would buy in a store or get food from that doesn't just grow out in the wild. We've been doing that indirectly. And that's called selective breeding. And we'll take a look at that a little bit closer in just a minute. And more recently in human history, we've been altering the genes of other organisms directly, and that's through genetic engineering. As you guys can see, this is going to take into account all of that information that we've been learning over the past few weeks about DNA, RNA, transcription, translation. And genetic engineering is when we're directly extracting the DNA, modifying it, and then putting it back into the cell again, or sometimes even using viruses to modify DNA while it's still inside of the cell. All right, so a couple definitions for you here. These actually have logical names here. So genetic engineering is when selective breeding is when we select the organisms that mate. And the reason we're doing that is we want to see certain phenotypes in the offspring. So this has been done ever since people have been around. This does not require a knowledge of DNA. And as you can see, it's allowing those organisms with desired characteristics to make the next generation. And the hope is that you'll get organisms that have the traits that you want. So humans select which ones breed. Again, examples, I'm going to give you a few in just a minute, but like I said, anything you buy from the supermarket is a product of selective breeding. Your pets have been selectively bred. We'll talk about dogs more in just a minute here, but even the grass growing in your lawn, that seed that was bought has been selectively bred to, either grow in the full sun, some shade. It's been selectively bred to grow here in our climate. So yeah, selective breeding. We select which ones breed. So if you're wondering what to write here, absolutely get this definition. And then I would jot this down too. That way you have an idea that, yeah, it's pretty much anything that doesn't live out in the wild is a product of selective breeding. So if you have birds that come into a bird feeder in your yard, they're wild. They're not selectively bred. If you pick wild raspberries or blackberries, those are not selectively bred. But again, anything that would be an ornamental plant you have around your house, anything that's used for food, livestock, crops, things like that. I told you pets, those are all products of selective breeding. I love this picture. So look at these in order here. So how does selective breeding, how did it actually, what would this look like over time? Well, if you take a look at the top left-hand picture, in nature, there would be all this variety of corn. Okay, there'd be long, skinny ears of corn. There'd be short, fat ears of corn. There'd be different colors of the kernels of corn. Height of plants would be all different. The way they taste, you get some that probably tasted good, some that were bitter, maybe some that were poisonous. I don't know, but you get the idea. Lots of variety. What people learned early on, if you look at picture 2, if you keep the best of the best and plant those, don't eat them, and you either destroy or eat everything else, that's what picture 2 is showing you. If you look over here at picture 3, now remember you're selecting for one trait, so that looks like they're trying to grow large ears of corn. If you keep saving the largest, best ears of corn and not eating those, but you keep planting those, as you can see, over time, your crop resembles what you're saving. And that's selective breeding. You're selecting which ones breed and which ones make the next generation. And then over here, picture 4, over time, your crop is all going to look like what you were selecting for. So that's selective breeding. We select the traits we want, and over time, allow those to mate and only have the ones that we want survive to make the next generation. And as you can tell, this has no knowledge of DNA is necessary here. So this is why people realize this early on in human civilization, and we've been doing this with all sorts of different organisms. All right, there's 2 main types of selective breeding. There's hybridizing, where we want to make a hybrid. So that's exactly what it sounds like. We're talking about organisms from the same species, but we're trying to get the best of both worlds. Okay, a great example of hybridizing would be a lot of these, they call them designer dogs that people like. Maybe some of you have a dog at home that's something crossed with a poodle, if it's got doodle in the name. I know there's labradoodles and golden doodles, and the whole idea there is, you have a Labrador retriever, and if you have a lab at home, they shed like crazy. Really nice dogs, but you have fur everywhere. Like someone's constantly vacuuming in your house. Well, poodles have more of a hair. They don't shed their fur constantly. So people have been crossing Labradors with poodles, and they just give it a cute name. They call it a labradoodle. And the idea there is you want easygoing, playful family dog. You want that disposition and that size of dog, but you want not shedding fur all over the place. And that's what a labradoodle is. Now, there's no guarantees with hybridization. I mean, you could hybridize dogs, and you can get a dog that sheds all the time with one that maybe doesn't have the temperament that you want. So you can kind of get the worst of both worlds. Okay, but that's what hybridization is aiming for, to get the best of both worlds. Inbreeding gets a negative connotation when you especially think about people. We're going to talk about why that is in a minute. But inbreeding is when you have organisms that, now remember, same species, but they mom and dad both have traits that you want. So you breed them together because you want more just like them. Okay, getting purebred dogs is an example of inbreeding. Okay, so if you have a purebred Labrador Retriever, another way of saying that is saying I have an inbred Labrador Retriever. And what that would mean is, as you look up through the family history of that dog, all you get is Labrador Retrievers. That's inbreeding. Sometimes we call it pure breeding, so that sounds a little nicer, but that's what inbreeding is. Okay, you're breeding organisms that look the same or have similar characteristics because you want more just like those. And we do this all the time with the food supply. Okay, that picture of the corn I just showed you, that's a picture of inbreeding. You're breeding the same sort of thing together over and over and over again because you want more just like them. Okay, we're going to answer this question in just a second, but I want to give you an example first. When you hear the word inbreeding, probably what springs to mind is lack of intelligence, birth defects, things along those lines. And you're not wrong. It's not all the time that happens, but let's just take a look at an example. This is a dog named Shelby that my wife and I got as a puppy when we were first married. Shelby's a purebred Labrador Retriever, and we just got her out of pretty much the newspaper. We went to the property where these dogs were, and there was a bunch of puppies, and they had the male and the female. And they had the paperwork for the male and the female showing that, yeah, they are purebred. It comes from the AKC, the American Kennel Club. So we're like, yeah, she seems like a nice puppy. We'll get her. And she was a great dog. What we learned about Shelby, though, was that, I forget, maybe when she's about 2 years old, she started limping, and she wasn't using one of her back legs. So we took her to the vet, who referred us to like a veterinarian surgeon, who kind of took a look at Shelby's knees and realized that, well, first off, dogs have cruciate ligaments in their knees just like we do. They cross over between the upper leg bone and the lower bones. And I don't know what they're called in dogs, but you've heard of MCLs and ACLs and PCLs. Those are anterior cruciate ligaments, or the medial cruciate. Cruciate means they form a cross. They go across each other. Well, in Shelby, both of those were ruptured. And I asked why, and the vet said it's just bad genes. So we decided to have surgery on Shelby because she was a great dog. And what they did was, you could tell here, they shaved this leg and they used some kind of synthetic material to like put those ligaments back in place. And they can see she has like the cone of shame on here so she doesn't lick out her wounds. And the idea there was put those materials in there and then hold the bones together and get her walking on the leg again and get the muscles, get her used to it, and she'd be good to go. Well, the problem with Shelby was she never used the leg again. I don't know if the surgery wasn't a success or what it was. Um, and we were into her a lot of money with that surgery at that point, and we had to give her to. Actually gave her to the hospital that did the surgery, and they were going to place her with someone that could adopt her and do more rehab with her because we just couldn't do it anymore. My son was born, and she was starting to get a little not mean, but she'd growl and bite a little bit at him because she was in pain. So we weren't in a position to really rehab her any further than what the doctor told us we would have to do. So we had to give her up for rescue to get more help. So this was the problem with Shelby, and I'm going to simplify this. In Labradors, they are known for a lot of times hip problems, but sometimes leg problems. So here with Shelby, I'm simplifying this, her parents were both carriers. So by inbreeding them, it raised the risk. Now we're saying that the small a is the problem here. It raised the risk that that autosomal recessive characteristic would show up. So this was our dog Shelby. There's always a risk of that, okay, of getting that homozygous recessive. But when you're inbreeding, you raise the risk. So that's why when you hear the word inbred, you think of birth defects, lack of intelligence, things. That's why you're raising the risk of this. So what are the genetic risks of inbreeding? You are raising the probability that in those closely related organisms that look the same, that you have two carriers that are being bred, and you raise the risks of that occurring. Okay, so that's the genetic risk. You're going to breed carriers and get a genetic disorder, and that's what happened to Shelby. Now, here's our dog now. Her name is Daisy, and to be honest, guys, I don't know what she is. I think she's a boxer, based on her coloration, mixed with, I think, some kind of a hound dog, because she has a howling kind of bark. I'm not saying that Daisy is never going to have, she looks really sad. Every time I take a picture of her, she's either moving or she looks really sad. I don't know. But she's a happy dog. We rescued her. She had a bunch of puppies. No one was adopting her. So we rescued her, and she's just a great little dog. But she's not inbred. Okay, she's a boxer mixed with something. So, we wouldn't expect her to have any of those genetic problems because it was just two dogs that got together and had Shelby and whatever other brothers and sisters she had. So there really wouldn't be genetic risks of having this, you might call her a mutt, but you would really call her a hybrid dog. Okay, so you wouldn't expect that because she came from different lineages. Okay, so she shouldn't have genetic problems. That's why it's good to if you're able to rescue an animal, if you want a purebred, that's great. But sometimes you get these mutts or these hybrids, and their genes are mixed together a little bit better. You're not going to get that homozygous recessive. All right, one last idea, guys. This is called mutagenesis. You guys know genesis means the beginning of, and then we're using mutations. This is when we expose organisms to radiation or chemicals on purpose because we want to make a new variety of them. This happens a lot with crop plants. Okay, things like rice and corn, things that have been selectively bred for so long, there's not a lot of varieties of them. They can expose the seeds to radiation or chemicals that we know cause little point mutations, and then see if we can make a new variety. There's very little control to this. You're just mutating things. Most of your mutations are probably going to do nothing, or they're going to cause the seed not to grow, but you're hoping to make a new variety that's never been seen before. Okay, maybe make a new color of a vegetable, or increase the nutritional output of it, or maybe it's resistant to disease. And I gave you a couple of examples down here of how this mutagenesis has caused new varieties. And guys, that's about it. Okay, get that copy down and you're good to go with this idea.